The courtroom fell into a hush so profound it felt as though time itself had paused. Judge Arthur Clean, his face a roadmap of decades spent weighing humanity's gravest mistakes, peered down at the woman standing at the defense dock. For nearly 2 hours, Elaine Williams had sat rigidly silent, her eyes absorbing every nuance of the proceedings as officers Mark Gallo and Chris Novak delivered their polished, self-congratulatory testimonies. Now, with the prosecutor's final words still lingering in the stale air, the judge's measured voice broke the tension. Ms. Williams, before I render my decision, would you like to make a closing statement? In that pregnant moment, the entire courtroom leaned in. Elaine's head rose. The tremor of confusion and fear that had shadowed her face all morning melted away, replaced by a steely fire reflecting a mind fully in command of its destiny. She met Gallo's smug smirk and Novak's averted gaze without flinching. Your Honor, I do, she said, each syllable crisp and unwavering, no hint of the trembling defendant who had entered this room hours ago. Eyes snapped to her hands as she reached slowly for the inner pocket of her dress shirt. The whisper of anticipation rose as onlookers braced for a note, a photograph, anything until her fingers curled around a simple, black leather wallet. With deliberate slowness, she opened it, and under the harsh glare of fluorescent lights, a golden badge erupted into view, flashing like a flare of undeniable power. The transformation was instantaneous. Breath caught in throats, murmurs died mid-sentence, and Gallo and Novak's faces drained of color as though they'd glimpsed a ghost. The judge adjusted his glasses, disbelief etched across his features, while the district attorney's jaw hovered between words he could not speak. How had this unassuming black woman, presumed guilty of drug possession and resisting arrest, become the embodiment of authority in a small, rust-belt town like Northgate? What force larger than chance had orchestrated this explosive reveal? As the echo of Elaine's badge click faded, so did the courtroom's rigid hierarchy. No longer defendant, now Inspector Evelyn Reed of the Civil Rights Division, United States Department of Justice. She stood unmasked, a single figure capable of toppling an entire police department's empire of corruption. But this was not an abrupt twist born of fiction. It was the culmination of 6 weeks spent in the shadows. 6 weeks of silent observation, meticulous evidence gathering, and personal sacrifice. Northgate, with its decaying mills and cracked sidewalks, had become her world, a world where power thrived on intimidation. Evidence vanished in backroom deals, and justice was a commodity for the highest bidder. In the silence that followed, Elaine's declaration, everyone knew they were witnessing more than a courtroom drama. They were at the brink of a reckoning. The real trial was just beginning. The judge's stunned gaze lingered on Inspector Reed for a heartbeat longer than protocol allowed, as though he were trying to will her back into the role of meek defendant. Then, almost imperceptibly, the elderly jurist blinked. The courtroom was resumed, and we cut back in time 6 weeks earlier to a world without expectation, without revelation, and without the promise of a reckoning. Northgate lay under a perpetually tarnished sky, its steel mills long silent but for the occasional groan of metal fatigue. The river that once powered those mills ran sluggish and oily, reflecting the smokestacks in its dark, viscous flow. On the cracked sidewalks, weeds claimed victory over concrete, and front yards sagged under the weight of neglect. The scent of boiled cabbage drifted from kitchen windows, mingling with the acrid tang of stale cigarettes and the faint undertow of industrial runoff. Neighbors exchanged wary nods rather than conversation, eyes darting behind curtains when patrol cars rolled by. They spoke in hushed tones about the way things are, and about men in blue who considered the poor, the black, and the brown as easy prey. Fear was their currency, and the Northgate Police Department held every bill. Corruption here wasn't an occasional crime of opportunity. It was a finely tuned machine. Officers Mark Gallo and Chris Novak, patrolling the corner of 4th and Pine, treated stop signs like traps. 3-second rules became gospel. Failure to achieve a perfect halt was pretext enough for a search. If evidence didn't materialize organically, they manufactured it. White powder slipped beneath seats, or a meticulously concealed bag of pills planted in a glove compartment. Tow truck drivers and bail attorneys waited in the wings, pockets lined with towing fees, storage cost, and legal retainers that the city's most vulnerable could afford. Complaints vanished into locked file cabinets. Witnesses who dared to speak were discouraged by veiled threats. At the top of this pyramid sat Deputy Chief Frank Donovan, whose loyalty network protected the sins of those beneath him in exchange for inflated statistics and hush money. The NGPD was, in every sense, a fortress, walls built from intimidation, cemented by silence. Into this web walked Evelyn Reed, no FBI boots, no Justice Department imprimatur, but Elaine Williams, a freelance writer seeking solitude to finish her historical romance. Outwardly, she was unremarkable, a black woman in her late 30s, dressed down in worn jeans, a soft sweatshirt, and scuffed sneakers. Her one-bedroom apartment on Maple Street exuded the musty aroma of boiled cabbage and cheap carpet. She bought candles to mask the smell, but the scent clung to hallways like regret. At dawn, she queued at the same coffee shop, notebook in hand, ordering a black Americano with no sugar. The barista greeted her by name, offering a polite smile that never quite reached his eyes. She shopped for groceries at the local market, greeted neighbors with a brief nod, and spent evenings hunched over her laptop, tapping out sentences that transported readers to candlelit drawing rooms and whispered intrigues of Regency England. Monday through Friday, she was invisible. Behind that gentle facade, however, was a mind sharpened by purpose and tempered by personal history. Evelyn's motivations ran deeper than the abstract pursuit of justice. 15 years earlier, her cousin Kevin, an honor roll student with a bright future, was pulled over by two crooked Baltimore cops. They planted drugs, swore he resisted arrest, and watched his world crumble in the span of a morning. Kevin missed his sister's wedding, the birth of his first daughter, and 2 traumatic years in a prison cell. By the time an investigative journalist and an FBI sting cleared his name, the damage had been done. He emerged broken, his spirit fractured beyond repair. Evelyn had watched him fade, the brilliance in his eyes dimming with each passing day. She vowed then, in the empty hush of her own grief, that no other family would endure that same devastation if she could help it. Northgate was her latest battleground. The first weeks were a delicate dance of small interactions and silent observation. Evelyn learned the rhythm of patrol schedules, the cadence of the officers' taunts, and the patterns of late-night shifts. She befriended a few dejected locals at the laundromat and a handful of bus drivers who whispered rumors about that stop sign trick. She recorded every overheard conversation on her small digital pen, its capacity limited only by her patience. Her car, a 2012 Toyota Camry purchased for $4,500 in cash, became both home and hiding place. Beneath the vinyl seats, DOJ technicians installed miniature cameras. In the dashboard vent, a wide-angle lens peeked out, ready to catch every misdeed. The inevitable collision came fast. On a gray Tuesday afternoon, Evelyn eased her Camry to a textbook 3-second stop at the infamous intersection. Sirens wailed seconds later, and Officer Gallo's silhouette strobed in her rearview mirror. The calm politeness she projected earned her no favors. It only fueled Gallo's disdain. As she handed over license and registration, Gallo's sneer deepened. Novak hovered nearby, postured tense, loyal to his senior, but haunted by faint echoes of the ideals that once led him to badge and uniform. In that moment, Elaine Williams, writer, neighbor, quiet stranger, ceased to exist. Evelyn Reed, civil rights investigator, stepped forward. She felt adrenaline surge, not from fear, but from the clarity of purpose. She watched, through multiple camera angles, as Gallo crouched, secreted a Ziploc bag of white powder beneath her seat, and then proclaimed his triumph to the spineless Novak. The lenses recorded his smug glare and Novak's averted gaze. Every whisper, every mechanical click of handcuffs, every muffled laugh from the station's backroom became irrevocable testimony. Even now, as we return to that courtroom, it feels impossible that a single woman could infiltrate an entire department's fortress and turn its own weapons against it. But in those 6 weeks, Evelyn carried more than cameras and pens. She carried the weight of every wrongly convicted family, every silent scream that justice had never heard. She moved undetected through Northgate's shadows, not like a hunter stalking prey, but like a mirror held up to a city's rot. And when the time came, she revealed herself not with force, but with incontrovertible evidence. No badge is more powerful than truth, and in Northgate, she was about to unleash it. Even the most masterful plan flutters on the edge of chaos until its final heartbeat. For Evelyn Reed, the culmination of 6 weeks spent weaving through Northgate's underbelly hinged on a single, perfectly scripted traffic stop in a nondescript garage 2 nights prior. A clandestine DOJ technical team transformed her battered 2012 Toyota Camry into a mobile command center. Tiny, high-definition cameras, one tucked discreetly in the front bumper, another in the rear, a third nestled in the right side mirror, and the fourth concealed in an air vent on the dashboard, were wired into a black box beneath the passenger seat. Omnidirectional microphones, no larger than a coin, were hidden in the frame and under the seat, ensuring every word, every whisper, would be captured in crystal clarity. In her pocket lay a slim recording pen, its sleek metal body disguised as an ordinary pen. Every element of proof, from video angles to audio fidelity, would converge into an unassailable montage of evidence. On the day of reckoning, Evelyn adopted the outward calm of Elaine Williams, the inconspicuous freelance writer. Her hands, however, betrayed nothing of the adrenaline coursing through her veins. As she slid into the driver's seat, her pulse steadied into a metronomic rhythm. Inhale, exhale, focus. She checked her rearview mirror, no tails. The neon buzz of a nearby pawnshop sign flickered in the distance, casting intermittent red and blue hues across her dashboard. 3 blocks away, the patrol car waited. In the shadows of a weathered alley, its rooftop lights dormant, but its presence menacing. In her mind's eye, Evelyn rehearsed the choreography, the approach, the 3-second stop. The first knock, the extraction of license and registration, the planted contraband, the arrest. It all had to be flawless. Rolling to the infamous stop. Sign at 4th and Pine, she gently applied the brakes. 1 Mississippi, to Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Not a fraction too soon. Not a millisecond too late. The tires stopped rolling. She gave a final check for hazards before inching forward. Instantly, the patrol car's emergency lights flickered to life, sirens shrilling. Her heart skipped. This was it. She settled into a benign smile as Officer Mark Gallows strode toward her window, the grin on his face predatory and practiced. Behind him, Officer Chris Novak lingered, his eyes betraying a flicker of hesitation. "You know why I stopped you?" Gallo barked, tapping sharply on her window with a gloved knuckle. "No, officer," Evelyn replied, voice even but laced with just enough uncertainty to sound authentic. She rolled the window down. His breath smelled faintly of coffee and stale beer. "You didn't come to a complete stop." He extended a hand for license and registration. She retrieved the documents from her wallet and slid them through the gap. Gallo snatched them and retreated to his cruiser, gasketed doors snapping shut behind him. Evelyn watched through the rearview camera, gratitude rippling down her spine when she saw Novak position himself at the driver's door ostensibly to keep her safe, but in reality to block her line of sight. Back in the car, Gallo leafed through her papers with theatrical slowness. Evelyn allowed herself a silent prayer to the gods of justice. Let him not stare too long. Let him not sense the lie in his planted evidence. The seconds stretched taut until Gallo's return. "Well," he began, voice dripping with condescension, "your record is clean, but you got a bad attitude. I can write you a ticket or make things worse." Evelyn's throat tightened, but her performance remained impeccable. "I'm sorry, officer. I thought I stopped properly." His eyes narrowed. "Are you calling me a liar?" Cold fury replaced his theatrical annoyance. "Step out of the car." She complied, every muscle tuned to subliminal alert. The Camry's interior cameras whirred to life in her mind, the lens in the mirror, the bumper views, the scope of the dashboard camera. Novak's gaze flitted between Gallo and Evelyn, his conscience battling loyalty. "Ma'am, stay here," Novak said, his tone uncertain. Gallo advanced, towering over her. Evelyn's hand brushed the pocket where her pen lay recording. The world slowed, his boot on the pavement, the badge on his chest shining in the sun. The dirty pavement flecked with gravel. Then, in a move so fluid it betrayed countless prior rehearsals, Gallo stooped, slipped the zip-top bag under the driver's seat, and stood, smug triumph flickering across his features. Evelyn's cameras captured the moment from 4 angles. The angle hiding in the mirror vent, the low shot from the bumper, the third side mirror perspective, and the interior camera peering across the cabin. "I smell marijuana," he announced dramatically, stepping inside. He sifted through the passenger side floor mats for effect. Sound caught perfectly by the mic under the seat. Then, the moment of contrivance, he yanked the bag free and held it up like a prize. "What's this?" "Looks like cocaine to me." Hands clicking in handcuffs nearly drowned out the silent gasp from Evelyn's hidden mic. He slapped the cuffs on her wrist, cold metal clamped down as loud and final as a verdict. "You're under arrest for possession of a controlled substance," Gallo declared, savoring each word. Elaine Williams dissolved under the weight of the moment, replaced by Inspector Reed's strategic composure. Tears welled in her eyes but never fell. She offered a trembling nod and let them lead her to the patrol car. Every coarse laugh in the station lobby, every jeering remark when she passed the commotion room, every offer of a bail attorney's business card was recorded. The walls smelled of sweat and bleach. The cold bench bit into her skirt as she awaited booking. In the interrogation area, Deputy Chief Frank Donovan strolled in, his presence as arrogant as ever. He greeted Gallo with a congratulatory clap on the back. "Good job, Mark. Keep these guys rolling, their easy cows to milk," Donovan murmured. The phrase hung in the stale air, captured perfectly by Evelyn's pen. Donovan's statement, "Easy cows to milk, keep our numbers looking good," was more significant than any planted bag. It was the smoking gun that linked corrupt leadership to street-level predators. As Donovan strode out, whistling a tune, Evelyn allowed herself the smallest of victorious sighs. She was still Elaine Williams, sobbing softly, bargaining over affordability of a lawyer. But inside, she braced herself for the real payoff. The cameras would soon furnish each corrupted word to federal prosecutors. The audio pen would immortalize Donovan's confession. Her heart pounded not with dread but with the electric certainty that this evidence would blow open every locked door in Northgate. She watched through her internal monitors as Gallo and Novak exchanged triumphant nods. Novak's eyes flicked to her badge area, then away, his moral hesitation evident even in his glance. Every second in that dank station pushed Evelyn closer to the moment of reveal. She imagined Judge Clean's face when courtside cameras broadcast multi-angle footage back onto the courtroom screen. She pictured Donovan's expression when federal agents marched in behind her, dragging handcuffs down his sleeves. By the time they released her from processing, no official charges filed against Elaine Williams, only Evelyn Reed. Her resolve was ironclad. The trap was sprung, the evidence laid bare, and the gears of justice engaged. She had stepped into Northgate as prey. Now, armed with undeniable proof, she emerged the hunter. The cruel machinery of the NGPD had ground its teeth on this trap, and it would pay the price. The sunrise over that greasy river would never look the same again. The courtroom lights felt suddenly too bright, as if every bulb had been turned up to spotlight a single truth. As Evelyn Reed's polished black leather wallet snapped shut, the gleam of her Justice Department badge lingered in the air, refusing to be ignored. Gold caught gold, the overhead fluorescence striking the badge's embossed lettering. The judge's golden gavel poised over the bench, and in that instant, the hush was absolute. Every rustle of paper, every cough, every shuffled footstep froze. Time bent around the shine of that badge, compressing decades of fear and injustice into a single, weightless moment. Shockwaves rippled outward. Judge Arthur Clean's hand trembled on the edge of his desk. The stoic mask etched by 30 years on the bench flickered in disbelief. Across the room, Assistant District Attorney Ramirez, who only moments ago had declared, "No one is above the law," looked as though he might feign his cheeks flush, his lips parting in mid-sentence. Jurors sat bolt upright, their foreboding expressions morphing into stunned curiosity. Defense and prosecution alike forgot their adversarial roles, united in bewilderment. Even the stenographer's fingers paused above the keys, the clatter of typing silenced by the weight of revelation. The entire courtroom had been built to enforce authority, and here, authority itself had been subverted. Evelyn seized the moment. Without haste, she placed the badge carefully on the table before her, the soft thud resonating like a drumbeat heralding change. "Your Honor," she began, voice steady and clear, "I am not Elaine Williams. I am Evelyn Reed, Inspector of the Civil Rights Division, United States Department of Justice." The words, measured and precise, glowed brighter than any spotlight. Behind her, monitors flickered to life for synchronized video feeds showing Officer Gallo's crouched form planting the zip-top bag beneath Elaine's seat, the wide-angle interior shot capturing Novak's calculated distraction, the mirror-mounted camera documenting Gallo's triumphant leer, the rear bumper lens filming the faint scuff of his boots on the pavement. Layered beneath the visuals was the quiet hum of the omnidirectional microphones. Every whispered confession, every coarse instruction crystal clear, projected onto the big screen. The footage played in a seamless loop. First, the perfectly still 3-second stop. Then, the snap of Gallo's gloved hand on her window. Then, the furtive slide of illicit powder into a spot he assumed no one would see. Novak's pale face flickered in the corner of frame 2 as Gallo shoved the bag into view and barked, "What is this?" "Looks like cocaine to me," Evelyn continued, each sentence a hammer blow. "We have corroborating audio recorded on my pen of Deputy Chief Frank Donovan congratulating Officer Gallo on my arrest and stating, verbatim, 'Keep pushing these guys, they're easy cows to milk. Keep our numbers looking good.'" The words "easy cows to milk" hung in the charged air, a stark verdict on institutional greed. Whispers cascaded through the courtroom like a landslide. Judge Clean's knuckles widened as he gripped his desk. The young district attorney's face had gone ashen, beads of sweat forming at his hairline. Jurors leaned forward, eyes wide, absorbing the pattern of systemic racketeering laid bare, manufactured arrest, forged evidence, towing kickbacks, bail attorney payoffs, all orchestrated under the protective cloak of sworn oaths. For a moment, the only sound was the faint drone of the courtroom's ventilation system. Then, the judge cleared his throat, a tremor of regained composure in his tone. "Inspector Reed," he said, "I require an explanation of these extraordinary allegations." Before Evelyn could speak, the back door swung open. 6 federal agents in dark suits strode in, their presence charged with purpose. At their head was U.S. Attorney Amanda Hayes, a tall, composed woman whose steely gaze swept the room. Papers fluttered in her hand as she moved to the bench, and addressed Judge Clean with calm authority. Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption. We have signed arrest warrants for Officer Mark Gallo, Officer Chris Novak, and Deputy Chief Frank Donovan, issued this morning on charges of evidence planning, perjury, extortion, conspiracy to violate civil rights, and racketeering under the RICO Act. She handed the stack of warrants to the clerk. In synchronized efficiency, 2 agents approached Gallo, who sat frozen in his chair, mouth agape. Stand up, one commanded. Voice low but firm. Confusion flickered across his features as he rose, cuffs clattering onto his wrist. Behind him, Novak's knees buckled. The younger officer's fearful eyes darted toward Donovan, who remained seated in the front row. Chest heaving, a second pair of agents blocked any escape routes. Hayes' voice, cold and detached, cut through the tension. Deputy Chief Donovan, you are also under arrest for public corruption, obstruction of justice, and participation in a racketeering enterprise. Donovan's protest sputtered into incoherence as cuffs closed around his wrist. The spectacle was swift, total, and unstoppable. As metal clinked and the trio was led away, the courtroom exhaled as one. Some jurors gasped, some sat in stunned silence. Witnesses blinked against their shock. Attorneys who once carried the posture of unshakable confidence slumped, forced to reckon with the collapse of evidentiary trust. Evelyn, standing center stage, allowed herself a momentary, subtle nod. She did not raise her arms in triumph. She did not let relief wash over her features. Instead, her gaze was steady, almost solemn, an acknowledgement that while this victory was monumental, the battle was far from over. In the hush that followed, Judge Clean cleared his throat again and looked down at Evelyn with a note of constrained respect. Inspector Reed, he said, voice softer, you have done more than prove a single case of misconduct. You have exposed an entire system's rot. Evelyn inclined her head, voice low but resolute. This is only the beginning, Your Honor. The Department of Justice will conduct a comprehensive investigation into every layer of the Northgate Police Department's practices, policies, and culture. Outside the courtroom, the afternoon sun had shifted. Its rays fell on the courthouse steps like beams of accountability finally piercing decades of darkness. Reporters gathered in clusters, their cameras pointed at the grand entrance, ready to broadcast every detail to a nation hungry for justice. Citizens who once whispered of fear and corruption now dared to hope. Bottles of barreled impatience uncapped, their contents pouring into the channels of public discourse. Evelyn Reed herself slipped her badge back into her coat pocket, her expression unreadable. She had walked into Northgate 6 weeks earlier as the hunted. She would leave as its liberator. Yet even as applause broke out in distant hallways, she carried the heavy knowledge that corruption lurked in more shadows than any one operation could uncover. The NGPD's fall was seismic, but it was only one city's catharsis. Beyond Northgate lay countless other precincts, other bastions of silence awaiting exposure. Evelyn's work had toppled one stronghold. Her next assignment loomed like an unwritten chapter. But for now, as federal agents escorted handcuffed men past stunned deputies and into awaiting vehicles, she allowed herself a brief exhale. In that instant, the prey had become the hunter, and the scent of justice drifted through Northgate's once corrupt corridors like a new dawn. In the weeks that followed the courtroom cataclysm, Northgate transformed under the unblinking gaze of federal oversight. A court-appointed monitor walked the precinct halls daily, reviewing arrest reports, body cam footage, and internal communications once hidden behind locked doors. 19 wrongful convictions, mostly minor drug offenses, were vacated. Freed men and women exhaling in tearful embraces with families who had waited years for justice. The city agreed to pay compensation packages to those victims, life-altering funds that, while never erasing the scars of prison cells and ruined reputations, offered a measure of redemption. Community centers reopened their doors to protest once silenced, and local churches held vigils of gratitude. Even the old steel mills, rusted monuments to a faded economy, seemed to stand a little straighter under the weight of hope. Back in her Washington, D.C. office on the 3rd floor of the Robert F. Kennedy building, Evelyn Reed paused at the window overlooking the Lincoln Memorial. The marble columns glowed in the afternoon sun, and Lincoln's solemn gaze appeared to watch over the nation's unfinished business. On her desk lay a single sheet of lined paper, the fresh-inked letter from Mrs. Jackson, a Northgate mother whose 19-year-old son, Marcus, had spent 8 months behind bars before Evelyn's investigation exonerated him. "You gave me back my faith in justice," the letter read. Evelyn's lips curved into a small, weary smile. It wasn't triumph she felt in that moment, but a quiet, steady relief, the knowledge that her sacrifice had restored more than freedom. It had revived fractured souls. But the victory in Northgate was a singular salvo in a much larger war. Corruption, like cancer, metastasizes in the shadows, and no single operation can eradicate it entirely. Evelyn carried the weight of that truth. She knew that for every Northgate stripped bare, there were other jurisdictions other Forth and Pines where officers trafficked in injustice, protected by complicit chains of command. Yet she also carried the conviction that one determined individual, armed not with weapons but with evidence, patience, and an unshakable belief in the oath she'd sworn, could ignite a chain reaction of accountability. Truth, once unleashed, is a light that no dark can fully contain. As evening settled over the capital, Evelyn gathered her files for her next mission. On top lay a dossier of corruption complaints from another small city, another fortress built on intimidation and hush money. Her next assignment loomed on the horizon like an unwritten chapter, Operation Chimera. She placed Mrs. Jackson's letter in her jacket pocket, alongside a fresh badge, outside. The hum of traffic blended with distant sirens, echoes of both disorder and the promise of justice. Her eyes lifted to the city skyline. This is only the beginning, she whispered to herself. Asterisk, stay tuned for episode 2. Into the belly of another beast. Asterisk, if you believe one voice can change everything, hit like, subscribe, and share this story. Comment below, would you dare to walk into the shadows for the sake of truth? Your voice matters.